You know, he was man enough to make that baby, but he can't be man enough to take care of it.
You had a short, passionate relationship, and then you became pregnant. Married and wants to forget he has a 3-year-old son. The only person you're trying to forget is Ms. Murphy. Family have told you another man is his biological father.
This man has not done anything for my son. I can count on one hand how many times he's ever even came to visit his son. First to my son as the boy. The boy, how's the boy doing? How's your son doing?
You were pregnant.
He said, I don't want you to have this baby. He said he didn't have the money for it. If that's the case, Your Honor, we would not be here. It would already been taken care of.
Was under the impression that it was not my son due to the fact of stuff that was told to me by family members. You know, she would tell me one minute she's pregnant by me, then she'd tell me, I asked her, what's the reason you got hickeys on your neck? Complex, pushed her up against the washing machine and put hickeys on her neck.
Really?
This court session unfolds under the steady authority of Judge Lauren Lake, where two deeply emotional family disputes are brought before the bench, each centered on paternity, responsibility, and the long-term consequences of denying truth. The courtroom becomes a place where personal history, unresolved conflict, and the legal search for certainty collide. What begins as denial and accusation gradually transforms into accountability, illustrating how the relationship between law and justice is tested when real lives are at stake. In the first matter, a mother appears before the court seeking clarity and support for her young son. She explains that the man she believes to be the child's biological father has distanced himself entirely, refusing emotional involvement and financial responsibility. The issue has escalated to the evidence stage in a divorce case, like Atmosphere, where credibility, timelines, and behavior are carefully examined. The defendant insists there is doubt, claiming outside influences and rumors led him to question paternity. This hesitation reflects a familiar pattern seen in many DNA test cheating stories, where uncertainty is used as a shield to delay responsibility. Judge Lauren Lake listens closely as both parties present their narratives. The mother describes years of raising her child with minimal support, while the alleged father argues that unresolved questions justify his absence. The court explores whether his refusal to step forward could result in an adverse inference in evidence act-style reasoning, where silence and inaction themselves speak volumes. This moment highlights the concept of justice in jurisprudence, showing that fairness is not only about proof, but about behavior when proof is available but avoided. As testimony continues, the courtroom hears from the man's wife, whose presence adds emotional complexity to the case. Her testimony exposes how unresolved paternity disputes ripple outward, affecting marriages, families, and children who had no role in creating the conflict. The discussion naturally connects to Supreme Court child support principles, reinforcing that once biological truth is established, legal responsibility follows, regardless of personal discomfort. The courtroom atmosphere makes clear why many people say DNA test people regret taking, not because of the science, but because truth changes everything. Podcast. Level realities cannot be undone once revealed. Another figure enters the case, a man who has been acting as the child's father in daily life. His testimony reframes the discussion from biology to responsibility, echoing themes often discussed in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where commitment and presence matter as much as blood. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that while emotional bonds are meaningful, the law must still identify biological truth so that the child's future can be secured properly. This balance demonstrates how courts navigate the fragile space between compassion and legal obligation. When the DNA results are finally presented, the courtroom reaches a decisive moment. The scientific confirmation ends speculation and excuses. The alleged father is confirmed as the biological parent, forcing him to confront years of absence. The ruling reinforces that once certainty is established, denial no longer has legal or moral standing. This moment mirrors discussions often explored in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where one piece of evidence can permanently alter a case's direction. The judge stresses cooperation, co-parenting, and accountability, underlining that the law's ultimate goal is the child's stability and well-being. The second case presented in court shifts the emotional focus, but reinforces the same legal themes. A grown man seeks answers about his biological father decades after losing his mother. His testimony reveals the lifelong impact of unanswered questions, demonstrating how unresolved paternity affects identity, confidence, and emotional development. This case aligns closely with Adoption Story's full episodes, where adults search for origins not for money or revenge, but for understanding and closure. The alleged father in this case denies certainty, explaining past relationships and confusion surrounding the pregnancy. Judge Lauren Lake carefully examines the timeline, the credibility of statements, and the emotional weight carried by the son. The courtroom becomes a forum not only for legal resolution, but for reckoning with years of silence. The judge highlights that avoidance does not erase responsibility, a lesson often discussed in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved issues resurface with greater intensity over time. When DNA evidence is revealed, the result confirms biological paternity. The ruling closes a chapter of uncertainty while opening another focused on reconciliation and healing. Judge Lauren Lake reminds all parties that while the court can establish truth, rebuilding relationships requires personal effort beyond the courtroom walls. This outcome reinforces that justice is not merely about winning or losing, but about acknowledging reality and choosing how to move forward. Across both cases, the court demonstrates how legal systems handle deeply personal matters with structure, fairness, and humanity. From questioning credibility to weighing evidence, from emotional testimony to scientific certainty, the proceedings illustrate why paternity courts remain essential. They protect children's rights, enforce responsibility, and provide answers that many families wait years to receive. Each ruling underscores that when the truth is finally revealed, it reshapes lives permanently, sometimes painfully, sometimes healing, but always decisively. These cases together show that paternity disputes are not isolated conflicts. They are intersections of emotion, law, and long-term consequence. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom becomes a living example of how justice operates when evidence, accountability, and compassion must coexist. In the end, the court does more than determine biological facts. It restores clarity, demands responsibility, and reminds everyone involved that avoiding truth only delays justice, never escapes it. As the proceedings continue before Judge Lauren Lake, the courtroom atmosphere shifts from confrontation toward reckoning. What becomes increasingly clear is that these cases are not simply about biology, but about how long-denied truths shape lives, decisions, and responsibilities. Each person present carries emotional weight into the room, and the court must separate feeling from fact while still honoring both. This balance defines the fragile relationship between law and justice, where compassion must never override accountability. In the first case, after the DNA confirmation, attention turns to what happens next. Judge Lauren Lake explains that the result is not merely an answer, it is a starting point. The biological father now faces legal obligations tied to Supreme Court child support standards, reminding him that fatherhood does not begin with choice once paternity is established. The court discusses how delayed responsibility impacts a child's emotional development and financial stability, reinforcing why paternity courts exist in the first place. The mother speaks openly about the exhaustion of raising a child while navigating uncertainty. Her testimony reflects a reality often explored in Truth Changes Everything podcast discussions, where delayed truth leads to years of emotional and financial strain. Judge Lauren Lake notes that the court cannot undo the past, but it can ensure the future is structured around honesty and support. This moment reinforces a central legal principle: justice looks forward, not backward. The presence of the father's wife remains a powerful undercurrent. Her emotions highlight how unresolved paternity cases extend far beyond the immediate parents. The court acknowledges her position while clarifying that marital status does not negate biological responsibility. This clarification echoes conversations often found in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where attorneys explain that legal duty follows fact, not comfort. The judge emphasizes transparency, noting that secrecy and denial often cause more damage than truth ever could. As the court addresses co-parenting expectations, Judge Lauren Lake references the importance of minimizing conflict in front of the child. The discussion mirrors themes from Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals confront past mistakes and commit to healthier patterns moving forward. The judge stresses that accountability paired with cooperation can transform a damaging situation into a stable one, provided all parties are willing to engage honestly. The case also touches on how prolonged denial can influence legal interpretation. Judge Lauren Lake explains that repeated avoidance of testing can lead courts to consider adverse inference in Evidence Act principles, where refusal itself raises legal suspicion. This explanation educates everyone present on why delaying a DNA test is rarely neutral. In many cases, it strengthens the argument against the person avoiding verification, a reality frequently seen in DNA test cheating stories. As the first case concludes, the courtroom does not erupt in celebration or condemnation. Instead, there is a sobering understanding that truth brings responsibility, not relief. The judge closes the matter by reminding all parties that the law's priority is the child's welfare, not adult pride. The ruling stands as a legal line in the sand, reinforcing the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Fairness requires truth, and truth demands action. The second case resumes with a noticeably different emotional tone. Here, the focus is not on a child seeking support, but on an adult seeking identity. Judge Lauren Lake recognizes that while the law treats paternity consistently, the emotional consequences differ drastically depending on timing. The plaintiff explains how growing up without knowing his biological father shaped his sense of self, echoing narratives common in adoption stories' full episodes, where unanswered questions linger for decades. The alleged father maintains that uncertainty and past circumstances prevented him from acting sooner. Judge Lauren Lake carefully dissects this reasoning, emphasizing that confusion does not erase obligation. The court examines how misinformation, pride, and fear often combine to delay truth, a theme frequently discussed in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved issues resurface years later with amplified consequences. As testimony continues, the judge highlights the irreversible cost of absence. She explains that while legal responsibility can be established at any age, emotional absence cannot be undone. This statement resonates deeply within the courtroom, reinforcing that justice, while necessary, cannot restore lost time. The law can provide answers, but healing depends on what individuals choose to do once those answers are revealed. When DNA results confirm paternity, the courtroom witnesses a different kind of reaction than in the first case. There is no shock, only release. The confirmation validates years of internal struggle for the plaintiff, proving that his search was not misplaced. Judge Lauren Lake addresses the father directly, emphasizing that acknowledgement is the minimum requirement now, not the finish line. The ruling makes clear that truth carries moral weight beyond legal consequences. The judge speaks about accountability in broader terms, explaining that paternity cases often expose generational patterns of avoidance. She notes that many individuals featured in DNA test people regret taking stories do not regret the truth itself, but regret the years spent running from it. This observation reframes DNA testing not as a threat, but as a tool that forces reality into the open, where progress becomes possible. As the courtroom reflects on the outcome, Judge Lauren Lake reiterates that the court's role is not punishment, but resolution. The law does not assign blame for emotions. It assigns responsibility for actions. This distinction is crucial in understanding how justice operates within family law. The ruling demonstrates that while emotions fuel disputes, evidence resolves them. The judge closes the session by addressing both cases together, noting their shared themes despite different circumstances. In each, the court served as the final authority where truth could no longer be avoided. The proceedings illustrate why paternity courts continue to matter in modern legal systems. They protect children, clarify identity, and impose responsibility where uncertainty once existed. Ultimately, these cases reveal that the courtroom is not merely a place of conflict, but a space where clarity replaces confusion. Judge Lauren Lake's handling of each matter underscores the enduring principle that justice requires courage, from those seeking answers and from those who must accept them. When evidence speaks, the law listens, and once truth is confirmed, life moves forward whether individuals are ready or not. Together, these rulings reinforce a powerful lesson. Avoiding truth delays justice, but it never prevents it. In the end, the court does what it is designed to do: separate fact from fear, confirm reality, and place responsibility exactly where it belongs. As the final phase of the courtroom proceedings unfolds under Judge Lauren Lake, the emotional weight of both cases settles into something quieter but more profound: acceptance. The shouting has faded, the arguments have been tested, and the evidence has spoken. What remains is the reality that the court was never just deciding paternity. It was confronting the cost of delay, denial, and silence. This is where the relationship between law and justice becomes most visible, not in the verdict alone, but in what follows after truth is confirmed. Judge Lauren Lake makes it clear that DNA results do not end responsibility, they begin it. In the first case, now that paternity is established, the legal conversation shifts firmly toward structure and accountability. The court explains how child support obligations are calculated and enforced, grounding the discussion in principles that align with Supreme Court child support standards. These rules exist not as punishment, but as protection, ensuring that a child's needs are met consistently, regardless of adult conflict. The judge addresses the father directly, emphasizing that regret cannot substitute for action. This moment reflects a reality often discussed in DNA test people regret-taking narratives. The regret does not come from knowing the truth, but from realizing how long it was avoided. Judge Lauren Lake underscores that once evidence is conclusive, continued resistance only deepens harm. The law expects adjustment, not excuses. Attention turns again to co-parenting expectations. The court explains that while personal feelings may remain unresolved, legal cooperation is mandatory. This distinction highlights the concept of justice in jurisprudence, where fairness is measured not by emotion, but by responsibility. Judge Lauren Lake stresses that the child's well-being must override lingering resentment, reminding both parents that the court will continue to monitor compliance if necessary. The role of the step-parent figure is also addressed with care. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges the emotional bond already formed, but clarifies that emotional presence does not replace biological accountability. This nuanced position mirrors discussions often featured in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal professionals explain how family law balances human connection with enforceable duty. The court makes clear that cooperation between all adults involved is not optional. It is essential for the child's stability. As the judge reflects on the earlier resistance to testing, she revisits how courts interpret avoidance. She explains that refusal or delay in submitting to testing can strengthen legal assumptions under adverse inference in Evidence Act reasoning. This serves as a broader lesson to everyone watching. Avoiding evidence rarely protects anyone. Instead, it often accelerates legal consequences, a pattern commonly seen in DNA test cheating stories that unfold across courtrooms nationwide. The courtroom then revisits the emotional aftermath. Judge Lauren Lake speaks candidly about how unresolved paternity disputes can trap families in cycles of mistrust. She draws attention to the importance of healing, referencing resources similar to those highlighted in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals confront personal failures and rebuild healthier paths forward. While the court cannot mandate emotional growth, it can insist on respectful conduct and compliance with orders. As the first case fully concludes, there is no dramatic celebration, only a sober recognition that truth demands maturity. The ruling stands not as a victory for one side, but as a correction to years of uncertainty. Judge Lauren Lake reminds the parents that the court's involvement does not end here. Compliance with support, visitation, and respectful communication will determine whether this resolution truly serves the child. The second case reaches its emotional conclusion in a markedly different way. Here, the legal question has already been answered, but the human implications are still unfolding. Judge Lauren Lake addresses the newly confirmed father and adult son together, explaining that while the law has established paternity, rebuilding trust exists beyond any court order. This acknowledgement reinforces a truth often seen in adoption stories' full episodes, where identity discovery is only the beginning of a longer emotional journey. The judge speaks directly about lost time. She explains that while justice can provide answers at any age, it cannot restore childhood moments or erase years of absence. This reality is addressed with empathy but without minimizing responsibility. The court makes clear that acknowledgement today does not absolve neglect yesterday. This balance reflects the law's role: honest, firm, and forward-looking. The adult son's testimony lingers in the courtroom, illustrating how deeply unanswered questions can shape a life. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that seeking truth is not an act of bitterness, but of self-respect. This framing aligns with themes often explored in Truth Changes Everything podcast, where individuals describe how clarity, no matter how painful, allows them to move forward without doubt. As the father responds, the judge carefully manages the exchange, ensuring that accountability is not replaced by explanation. She clarifies that understanding circumstances does not erase consequences. This moment demonstrates how the court separates empathy from excuse, a foundational principle in family law. Justice, the judge reminds everyone, is not about comfort. It is about responsibility. The courtroom quiets as Judge Lauren Lake delivers her closing reflections. She addresses both cases together, noting how different paths led to the same destination: truth confirmed by evidence. She explains that family courts exist precisely because emotions alone cannot resolve disputes that involve children, identity, and long-term obligation. Evidence provides certainty where memory, accusation, and denial cannot. The judge also speaks to a broader audience, explaining why DNA testing remains one of the most powerful tools in modern family law. Scientific certainty eliminates speculation, and forces honest decision-making. This reality reinforces why many legal educators and practitioners emphasize early testing, a point frequently raised in the Divorce Course podcast, where delayed clarity often worsens conflict. Judge Lauren Lake concludes by reminding everyone that the court does not exist to shame or reward. It exists to protect. Protect children from instability. Protect adults from lifelong uncertainty. Protect truth from distortion. Once evidence is clear, the law's duty is to act decisively, even when the outcome is uncomfortable. As court adjourns, the lasting message is unmistakable. These cases demonstrate that paternity disputes are never just private matters. They affect marriages, identities, childhoods, and futures. When left unresolved, they create generational consequences. When addressed, even late, they offer a chance, however imperfect, for accountability and healing. In the end, the courtroom does what it is designed to do. It transforms conflict into clarity, emotion into structure, and doubt into certainty. Under Judge Lauren Lake's guidance, the law fulfills its role, not by rewriting the past, but by defining responsibility moving forward. The truth, once revealed, cannot be undone, but it can finally be faced.